Hey guys, Scott Fresener with my good friend Richard Greaves. This is the episode 5 of the T-shirt report. And Richard, what are we going to talk about this week?
This week, the death of DVDs, the death of CDs, the birth of the beefy T's 40 years ago, the MacBook Pro and the USB-C cable that really introduces, and of course, teasing the trade shows that we'll be going to in the next couple of weeks.
And then we're both going to rant here and there. We have a couple of rants. I have a rant about people not giving good directions. And we're going to talk about some of the newest magazine articles, a couple things that came out in Stitches of all magazines that we were surprised at. So we have a great show, so stand by and hold on to your seats. And here we go with the T-shirt report. Is that the Oscar de la Renta you're wearing, or are you just glad to see me? What do you have? What do you have on?
It's green for St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, yeah.
This is my pie shirt.
314 pie, and on the right,
it's pie backwards.
Pie backwards. Where'd you get that? Did you buy that, or did you print it somewhere?
I bought that a while ago. It's actually a transfer. It's actually survived. I wear it once a year in the St. Patrick's Day area. I know it's coming because it's green, so I dig that out. And then, I remember, that's right, because Pie Day is coming up. This Saturday is Pie Day. So I'll be wearing this at the Imprinted Sportswear show in Atlantic City.
You'll be so trendy. You'll be Pie Day man, and you'll be St. Patrick's man. And of course, for me,
I'll be hip.
You'll be cool. Now, for me, orange is the new green.
Oh, I see. Well, that's because it's going to be 90 degrees where you live.
Monday. So. Hey, I noticed that you changed the shirt behind you.
I've changed the shirt almost every show. As when I started to put up shirts, I've put up a different shirt every week. It's a show-off spot there.
So people are going to have to go back and look at every episode and see what your shirt is behind you.
Yeah, the first one I put up was my Fred Astaire shirt, which is the very first shirt I ever printed personally, and it was a bootleg shirt that I photographed out of a Hollywood-style book with a photograph of Fred Astaire, and that's where I learned, because Fred Astaire's got a black tuxedo, and then he's got a half-tone face and hair that's a lighter color. So you really have two blacks there, and I could never get it to print with just one screen. Barry, the screen maker, made me two screens. There was a yellow kind of a background, and here, I'll cheat.
Yeah, we didn't actually talk about that shirt. I saw the shirt.
This shirt is from 1980 or 81 or something like that. So
there's two blacks.
Yes, it's been washed 1 million times.
Yeah.
The JCPenney test is nothing compared to the Bachelor washing his own T-shirts test.
Well, I don't think people understand that. A lot of times they see a great shirt like that and they go, oh, how'd they do that? Well, they use two screens or three screens. Yeah.
Well, anybody that studied photography understands that the rich blacks in the shadow or the highlights or the halftones, you do that with two screens. That's more expensive, but if you want the darks to be dark, solid, rich black of the tuxedo, like a good black and white photograph that doesn't have a flat, low contrast, I want the contrast. So I actually made another screen. It was actually the same screen, and he overexposed it.
Yeah.
He put on a different mesh kit. He overexposed the exact same positive. I didn't tape it off, but that's how we choked out the dots that were in his face. So there was no face. It was just the tuxedo and the background splash. But it's the very first shirt I ever printed. Yes, a bootleg stolen from a magazine or a book.
So what does qual es la siguiente orden mean?
When I was the production manager at Coastal Printworks in North Hollywood, California, I didn't speak any Spanish. And I think what actually happened is that poor Victor was running around and not able to print the speeds that he'd like to, because he would stop and have to go fluff his own shirts as he was loading. I said, no, we're not doing that anymore, because the person that's loading a press, they are the queen of the ball. They are the master of that particular universe. And when the loader is there, they should not ever move ever again. And so I told him, just call up for more shirts. Everyone will stop except the people on your press to help you get more shirts. So don't say when the last one gets picked up, Don't say more shirts. When you see her running out, go, hey, I'm running out of shirts. Mas camisa, mas camisa. So you'd hear that every once in a while. My guys, once they understood what it was, because we don't want the press to ever stop. So you could get Henry Kissinger to fluff shirts, if you could, if you needed it, because it doesn't really matter. You've got to keep the press running. Now that's what's on the back of the shirt. So I printed up those shirts.
What? More shirts? More shirts?
That's what it says. It says Mas Camisas on the other side of that shirt. You can't see that, but this one says, what's the next order? Because that's what everybody should be thinking. So I had the art department make up that shirt, and we printed up about 20 of those or whatever, printed them out, and this was to remind everybody this is what to do. Of course, it's pretty odd when you go to the grocery store or something. And
I'm
so
thinking
people
the
want to
same
know,
exact thing.
what is that about?
The Spanish guy's going, where's the next order? When's the next? More shirts? What's this guy? Crazy? All right, so people are going to get back to the previous episodes and look at all the Easter eggs.
I'm trying to remember what I did last. I had the printing on the sleeves before it was sewn shirt that I won golden images for. So we would print the sleeves, then have them set on the body, and then when the bodies would come in, we would print them, and they would make I don't know if that shirt has been hung back up. That shirt is not here, but it was a famous shirt. It's what we created Shadow Graphics to actually do back in the early 80s. Printing on shirts, sleeves, before they were sewn. Something I learned at Carolina Pacific in North Carolina, where I learned how to make shirts, where I learned how to sew and cut. And
did I tell you that I'm now an expert plumber?
No. That's when I moved into this 1901 house to live with Gina. I learned all kinds of plumbing. What have you learned how to do?
Well, my joke has always been for years I'm not a plumber because it always leaks, but I'm doing some remodeling in my house, and so the eye-opener for me was I probably watched a dozen YouTube videos in the last week on different things, plumbing and fixing drywall and stuff like that I kind of knew, and it was such an eye-opener because I realized why I don't sell any DVDs on screen printing. I can barely give a DVD away. And it's because people go to YouTube. I mean, I thought, that I was the only guy that wasn't selling DVDs, and I can see the world does not buy a DVD. Why would they order a DVD from me and have me ship it to them when they can just go to YouTube and type in, how do I make screens? Boom, there it is. So now I know why I don't sell many DVDs. It's a different world out there.
Yes, but I'd have to say that the quality of education that you get from YouTube, just because everybody's got a camera now or everybody's got a phone where they can make a video, doesn't make everybody an expert in screen printing.
I agree. Even on patching drywall. Yesterday I watched volume 1, video 1, video 2, and then there was no meat. He never got to show me, and somebody on the notes push. What happened to number 3? So the quality.
My wife wants me to finish.
You're right. The quality of these things, but it was just interesting that I found myself. How do I do this? How do I replace this little chingus in this thing? And then boom, go to YouTube, and there it was. So anyway, that's just my little ramble for today on why we don't sell DVDs at all. So.
Now, talking about DVDs, or not DVDs, but about YouTube, I tweeted something just a couple of weeks ago about the 6 life lessons I learned from Spike Lee. And that what attracted it to me was that it was actually an interview that Spike Lee did with Mark Echo, and the famous East Coast printer who is famous for having 2 or 3 ventures that actually failed before Echo, really took off and turned him into what I assume is a multimillionaire that he is today. That's on Medium. I'll put the address in the show notes, but that's on Medium. And he literally talks about how he met Spike Lee by airbrushing shirts, sending it to all kinds of lots of media people in a way that we've all tried to scrape up some marketing information or GG. And Spike Lee, even though it was probably a form letter, he's the only one that actually wrote back. And whatever, however it worked out, they actually did some work together. And now they're chatting like they're pals. You can meet almost anybody the right way.
And that's that. You have the thing on the medium.com. You're going to post it in the show notes.
It's at Medium. I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah. You see Mark Echo everywhere. I mean, you go to Macy's or whatever, and I think it's replaced. Who were the other guys? Affliction. It used to be all Affliction stuff. Now, now you see all his stuff. So
he seems to be a hip hop standard. People like to wear just the Echo name.
yeah. Hey, quick industry news. This is probably not industry, but it kind of is. I see in Wall Street Journal, my favorite paper, because you can learn a lot about industry and business. But Abercrombie is off 14%. Of course, McDonald's today is way up, but Abercrombie's off 14%. My question to you is, when was the last time you walked into an Abercrombie store? I mean, you go to the mall, you can't even see in them. They have the windows all because it's too cool to go in there unless you're.
Well, I think your better question to ask me is, when's the last time I walked into a mall?
Okay, well, other than that. But I mean, you got Forever 21, big glitzy windows, lots of bling. You've got H&M, lots of stuff in the windows. Abercrombie, you walk by and it's all real secretive. And so I always laugh when I see that their sales are 14% off. But the point of the article was that their sales are off, they claim, because people do not want to buy logo shirts anymore. They don't want to buy Abercrombie on a shirt. That they want to buy more bling. That for the women, it's more bling, and much less so logo shirt sales, supposedly, what this article was kind of about, are way off on a retail level. I just hadn't caught that.
Well, I never understood why Abercrombie exploded as just a name. It was something that I remember from the 50s or the middle 60s, going to New York, and Abercrombie and Fitch was a cool department store because it had to go to New York to actually go there. So I have to say I did not know. Now, I lived in Los Angeles for many years. I lived in New York for many years, and I never went into an Abercrombie. So
I walked in a couple times, and I always felt like the old guy, because it always was designed. It seemed like a cult. You have to know what's behind the windows. I always thought your sales are 14% off. Open your friggin' windows up so people can see into your store, as they walk by, and take off the incense smell and blah, blah, blah.
Listen to Mr. Selfridge.
Who's that? I'm sorry.
Oh, Mr. Selfridge is the man who really invented store displays.
Oh.
That everybody that watches PBS instead of Downton Abbey, that if they watch Mr. Selfridge, they get those little tips. But if you study Selfridge, who came from
Jeremy Pivens.
Jeremy Pivens,
yes,
but
yes,
really Mr. Selfridge.
You're right.
And Selfridge's was one of the places that every time I went to England, especially in the early days when I first was going to England, that going to Selfridge's was a great experience. Fortnum and Mason, Harrods. I liked Selfridge's better than any of the other big famous British department stores.
Well, Abercrombie could learn from those guys.
Well, it was Selfridge that is said to have created display windows in Europe. So he was already doing that at Marshall Fields in Chicago.
Okay, I think I've been out of the loop, but I saw in recent impressions that the BPT is now 40 years old. You pointed out that it's been they've been promoting this 40-year anniversary for the last few months. But
you didn't get to go. You didn't get to go to other shows. I've been to more shows this year. It was in this impressions that they did an advertising because they've got a limited edition BPT.
What's that mean? Signed?
I don't know.
Red chains or whatever.
Now that you've called me out, and I didn't read the BVT ad because I know that it's 40 years old, because where I think I first saw it on the Ink Kitchen. Tom and Rick Roth's blog for textile screen printers.
Right. Well, you told me you had a good Hanes story.
Well, my good Hanes story is that I used to work for Carolina Pacific. I said Carolina Pacific. Sorry. I used to work for Coastal Imprints. I did work for Carolina Pacific in the early 80s, but I worked for Coastal Printworks in North Hollywood, California in 1995 to like 1998. And I was the production manager there. And there was a place where we used an awful lot of BPTs. Every 3 weeks, we would get the same truck drivers that would come directly from Winston-Salem with white BPTs, maybe some colors, but we blew through an awful lot, printing all the full color process that we printed there. And that's the reason I went there, was to work on full color process with them. They were actually very good printers. They didn't need that much help. We changed the some of the things, but didn't take that long. So I would get these gigantic trucks, and the boxes would all be crushed. So unfortunately, the shirts inside were all wrinkly, and this was a real pain to try and put full color process on shirts that were basically wrinkly. I happened to be phone friendly with Roman Nelson, who ran the dye house, and I called him and said, what can I do? How can I get it? And he says, it's a problem we hear about all the time. But he put me in touch with the quality people, and the next time they were going to come to visit, there are 6 people that were going around to specific customers and seeing what their problems were. And they came while I was at FESPA. So I was at FESPA in Lyon, France in 1996, and I wasn't able there to do it, but I'd left them a diorama photographs, which they took with them. And so they were kind of happy that they had the pictures, but they were not happy with the evidence there. And they really didn't change anything. So I went on a crusade to find a better shirt. And so I called all the distributors that I could, and I get 60 different white, good quality T-shirts suitable for the In-N-Out Burger or the museum shirts that we were reproducing on a regular basis. Of course, In-N-Out Burger was probably the biggest of the big volume full color process we printed. So I test printed 60 different, the exact same designs, but I printed 60 different shirts. It really was a blind test because Victor printed them. Zoom, zoom, he just ran up to the press, and when they came out, we examined it, and there was just no question. The beefy tee beat out the things. For instance, Jeff Janot, who we visited at the shop that he's working in now, he had told me that the Loft Tees was a much better shirt, and it just wasn't. The beefy tee was the best printing shirt for full color process, and so it didn't really matter if we had to iron the shirts ahead of time or stamp them or whatever. So I'm a huge beefy tee fan. Now, of course, I'm dated now because that's 20 years ago, that story I'm telling you. Things could have changed, but
I think
they
they've
weren't
changed.
responsive. Yeah.
We get Hanes in for our class, and they'll ship us, tons of shirts. I mean, the UPS guy pulls up and then just keeps unloading more and more Hanes shirts. We get them for free from Hanes, but they're always now very, very flat, very. And I know Roman because all those guys came to class. Hanes for years would send people to class. We probably had 80 people over the years from Hanes that came to class to learn about the process, so they could then go in the field and visit guys like you and kind of know more about screen printing and stuff. So, but I think it's better now.
Roman used to send me defective shirts. So every once in a while I get 2-3 cases of shirts, and they were great white samples, and I use those for my own personal sampling shirts. I don't think I shared them with Coastal Printworks. I used them for my own secret experiments. He was a great friend to me while I was printing, and I never met him.
Yeah, he's a good guy, and Hanes was always real progressive, I think, in those areas. It's funny how times have changed. I was cleaning out my garage last week, and I ran across a dark shirt printing kit made easy from, what do you think that was, 1994? It had 3.5-inch floppies in it.
I saved one fly, but I think I threw all those out.
Yeah, it had the 3.5-inch floppy. So now I have to do my classes, and I give my students all the work files, like a gig of work files on DVD. And it seems like the last 6 months, all of a sudden, I get all these guys, I haven't got a DVD player in my computer. So now I've got to put them on thumb drive so I can pass them around the classroom. And you're much more current than I am on the latest in USB, but I think DVD drives on computers are probably a thing of the past for sure.
We're recording this the day after the big Apple Watch announcement. What I was much more interested in was the new MacBook Pro that has the new USB-C connection. Now, what this means for MacBook Pro users, now you have a MacBook, don't you? What do you run your, what is the actual unit that you use?
I'm using a, oh boy, I have to look over. It's a MacBook laptop.
Now, Apple has always been a trendsetter when they pulled the DVD player out of their machines, when they pulled the floppy disk out of their machines.
Blasphemy.
There was a cry you could hear, but you know what? They're ahead of the curve. That's if you're an Apple person, you go with that flow and you get with it. Now, it just bothered me. When I'm watching the announcement yesterday, it bothered me that, everything has to be wireless now. It says, yeah, but Apple people have got to be cringing because first we had the Thunderbolt, then the Thunderbolt 2, then the Lightning cord. Now, the Lightning cord was very sophisticated because you could plug it in both ways, and that's the real benefit of USB-C, which means compact, I assume. But what it really is USB 3.1, which is the new connector. So I did just buy a USB external hard drive that we talked about last week, and that's, it's still going to work, but the new way, the future, which is definitely cemented for both sides, the Apple and the PC side, is this new USB-C as in cat connector 3.1. I'll put some reading material in the show notes so people want to study it further, but now if you're going to buy any new equipment, you really should buy it with USB-C if it's offered. Now, I've never, I believe that this Apple the new Mac Pro, which isn't going to come out for a couple of more months, will be the first product that actually has one of these cables in it. Now, it is supposed to provide all the connection that you might need in one cable. That's sort of what the Thunderbolt did, but you can literally drive a new model of a monitor. It also is where the power comes from. It's also where you could change data. Like, for instance, right now I have my phone plugged in, and I can connect. It's connected to my computer, so I can talk to my phone through my computer, and it's powering up at the same time. It's being recharged is what I meant to say. So it's not that it's that unusual, but now you're going to have a dock. It's going to be another piece of equipment. It's very early going, but people should be aware USB-C, like all the other upgrades that we've seen, including those Apple products that had proprietary chips in them, like the Thunderbolt, because I know that all my Apple friends were upset because none of the gear that's in their cars will work now. They can't just drop their new iPhone into they all had to buy new gear for inside their cars. So there'll be a lot of squawking. In 3 years. We'll have forgotten all about it when we see how cool the new cables are and the speed that you can transfer info.
It'd be the norm for sure. I heard a rumor that there's a road trip in the works here.
Oh, yes. Going to Atlantic City.
Are you making a movie of this? Is it be a movie? Is it going to be a movie? 4 screen printers?
Greg Kitson's not going with us. He was. It wasn't just a trick. Maybe it was that he heard that we'd announced it, or that he'd have to spend 10 hours in the car both ways with us, so he's not going. No, he found an airplane flight. He's a businessman with a regular business.
Yeah.
And so he's probably flying. I don't know. He flies out of Fort Wayne. That seems to me that would be expensive. But I was looking forward to it, but that's not going to happen. Look to a report next week. Same bat channel, same bat time. Would be our report from the Atlantic City show. Maybe a little bit longer, although we're going a little long every week, it seems. We got plenty to talk about. Jabber.
Now, this year, the show's going to be with the PPAI. You said you weren't very familiar with PPAI.
No, I'm not.
It's like ASI. I always think of it as ASI Plus or whatever, but that's the Promotional Products Association, and they're co-locating at the beautiful Atlantic City Convention Center. Remember the old one? That was that was a historic. What was the Burt Parks and Miss America pageant was there years ago. Yeah. So anyway. So you're going to go there, but I don't think you're going to have any bad weather. Like last year, I think you were in a snowstorm driving, but this year I think you'll be fine probably.
The wind and the cold. I didn't bring the right equipment. Now I'll be warm this year, that's for sure.
Yeah.
February and March used to be the open house season. I used to be at a different location every single weekend giving seminars in the glory days of the open houses. They seem to have drifted away, but there are two this month that I'm going to try and go to. The first one's the T&J in Huntley, Illinois. That's their home base. I see the T&J's got 2 or I think maybe 3 little branches around the Midwest, so they seem to be growing. Sid Tabor used to work at M&R. I knew him when he worked at M&R. He runs a very nice outfit. I don't know exactly what day that is, but I'll put it in the show notes. It's after the One Stop Expo that's in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I'm definitely going to try and go to that. It's a place called the Devos Place Convention Center, so they're not running it actually at the branch. Now, you've got to sign up. You've got to be a customer. So go to One Stop Inc., onestopinc.com. Again, I'll have that in the show notes. You need to be a customer to be invited, probably because there's a lunch. But there's some training programs. There's a screen making one and something on sublimation, I believe. So I'm interested in both of those open houses.
They are fantastic. I mean, I've been to one stop, but the ones I've worked, you get that quality time, whether you're a buyer or an exhibitor, with your little table. You get that one-on-one time you can't get at a trade show. And the exhibitors bond because they're stuck there for a couple of days and wherever. I used to go to the one at Slippery Rock that was Wildside. And, you're
Right.
stuck there and you go to the hotel, you have a few drinks, and it's not like a trade show as much because you really get that quality time. So I think if people get to open houses, they really get to talk one-on-one and really bond. And they meet their competition, and it's kind of I think they're fantastic. Hey, from the support logs, years ago, it used to be the question was always Mac or PC. Do I get a Mac or do I get a PC? I get that so rare anymore. But the question I do get a lot lately is, do I get Corel or Illustrator, which is a better program, or do I get Corel, Illustrator, or Photoshop, and they don't realize that Photoshop is a different animal and not the same as Corel or Illustrator. But for years, you've known me a long time. I did Corel videos. I promoted Corel. I like Corel. I use Corel. And I never was an AI guy, Adobe Illustrator. But I'm telling you what, in the last 6 months, I get more AI files. I don't think I've seen a Corel file, seriously, for doing steps. I haven't seen one probably in 2 months. Now, that doesn't mean that Corel is losing ground, but I think that the question of which is a better program is almost more now with Adobe and the Creative Cloud, which is being supported more, which is being kind of used more because it's free. You get the cloud, $50 a month, you get Adobe Illustrator, whether you like it or not. And you're thinking, well, now Corel comes out with Corel X7, and that's going to cost me another $200 to update. Maybe I'll learn this Illustrator because I got it with the cloud. And I think that's what's happening. And so, but this morning was a post on one of the Screen Print Forum Facebook pages about somebody saying, oh, I can do everything I need in Corel. That's okay, but you had the AI guys coming out going, I can still do it all on AI. And so I'm not either way because I'm a Corel guy. I'm not an AI guy. I have AI. I use it. I can go in and play with it. I get it. But I came to the party with Corel, but Corel's losing ground. And so now I got to tell people, you know what, when they ask which one to get, are you on the cloud? Are you going to get Photoshop? You're probably going to go to AI then because, for one deal, like if you had to buy AI in the old days, that would be $600. Photoshop, $600. Corel, $400, and then every year the update. I think people are going to AI. That's just my take on it.
Now, how did you actually learn how to use AI? Although I remember that in the olden days, Bob Alabaster used to do all the AI stuff for you. But I have had AI since like 1999, and I tried really hard to learn how to use it. I've owned Lightroom 3 and 4, and there's just something about these two that I don't know why, but I'm having a real hard time wrapping my head around how they actually work. How is it that I used to live in Photoshop, and the idea of that seamless move between Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop was what I was trying to learn how to use, or at least promote with guys that worked with me. How did you get over that, or have you?
I haven't. No, because I'm a Corel guy. Corel calls certain things like an outline or a stroke, or they call things differently, and so I struggle with AI, and it's just because I haven't taken the time to sit down. I mean, I open up customers' files, I play with them, I can tweak them, I know all that, but to build a design in AI, I go to Corel, only because I know Corel. But I think if you don't know Corel and you come to the party with it as AI, and that's the first one you use, you figure it out. But it's the Corel guys I think have a hard time changing over to AI because they're so into Corel. So I'm not saying which one's better, by the way. I think they both do the same thing. I find stuff to be easier in Corel, but I'm telling you, I see so many more AI files. I think it's because of the cloud. I think that the world is kind of transitioning slowly because of that. And Corel is known for bringing out buggy software. I still get that question, hey, I got X7, now this doesn't work, that doesn't work. And I think people have gotten fed up with Corel bringing out crap sometimes and updates that don't work. And whereas Adobe's pretty clean, so I'm not going either way. Not a Mac or PC thing, but I'm just saying I think that now I tell people, well, if you're going to go in the cloud, you're going to get Photoshop. That's self-serving for me. I want them to buy Photoshop, so they'll buy TSEPs. So I'm going to say, yeah, get a Photoshop. Well, you're probably gonna go with AI, because I can open an AI file in Photoshop. I talked to a guy yesterday that was a AI guy, and he was saving files as JPEGs, lower quality, back to my theme of last week, opening up Photoshop to run TSEPs on it. I says, no. Photoshop will open up an AI. It will? Yeah, it's an Adobe product talking about seamless. And he goes there, wow, I could actually, you think people would know these things. Anyway, that's probably one of my kind of a rant today, but that was a support call of which do I buy.
Do you remember when you learned that Photoshop could open up a PDF file?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember there was like, really? And I'm looking around because I want to see if I'm going to get caught or whatever. But wasn't it you that told me last week or something that you had college students, or you got some client of yours that has guys that went to college, and there I can imagine that they learn on the cloud, because that would be the way you'd want to teach one whole Adobe system, or you can get the student versions that we all probably tried once or twice to sneak in a student version. But didn't you have some college students or something?
They never. It's a boss emailed me. I've got 2 college artists. They've never heard of Corel Draw. Now, I'm sorry. I know that if you go to college, you take graphics, you're going to be on either a Mac, and you're going to be using AI and Photoshop. But to have never heard of Corel, that shocked me, and that showed me, though, that Corel, I think, is losing ground. I mean, to have an artist out there who's going, Corel? What's that? That's odd.
Well, also remember from the olden days, the 90s, where you'd get something that was made on a Macintosh, and they could open up Windows files, but you couldn't go the other way without special third-party software and stuff like that. And I told seminar attendees for ages, well, if you want to be in the business, you buy yourself a Macintosh, because that's what people are using too. You can't just have the Windows, and I didn't see it as a big expense.
No, but then it was. Now it's not so bad. But so this is not a Mac versus PC, although I'm not even sure how many of my users are Mac guys. I'm guessing probably half and half now. But I'm telling you, AI is kicking their butt.
Well, I also remember that the big thing that I used to do is that Corel, I never liked photo paint. And so you take a picture, and if you wanted to add type to it, again, this is let's say maybe version 9 or something of Photoshop, that you take it back into Corel and you do all the typesetting there, because you got a vector number. And I remember that, now I'm not remembering exactly the year, but when some of the Illustrator engine was moved into Photoshop and you got better lettering, but I remember that in Illustrator you couldn't envelope something and bend it very well, whereas you could 1, 2, 3, you could do that sort of thing, which every college sports team, or every school sports team wants a bent letter thing around a basketball.
Yeah, that was where Corel ate AI's lunch for years, was they could do the enveloping and stuff. But that's all changed now. Now it's not a big deal, So it's just interesting how things have evolved.
Well, I will say that Craig Mertens and Jay Basile went. Jay is not with Craig anymore at what is it, Digital Arts?
Digital Art.
Okay.
Yeah.
A great company. I'd used their products when I was working with Ted Stahl in the olden days. Ted didn't like that. I was communicating with them. That's before Craig's time, I think. But they do an excellent job of showing how, if you're in Corel Draw, that you can move to engraving, that you can move to a laser work, and people that are spreading out and doing other things besides, I'm just a T-shirt guy, but people are doing embroidery. They've got great systems that you don't have to have 4 art departments.
Good point. And even the rhinestone stuff, there's rhinestone software. It's a good point, actually. That I think that their Corel guys are real entrenched there. I think it's the graphic artists that are not doing any engraving and any of that. They're the guys. So you've got these 2 different camps. We've been ranting this whole episode, but let's continue on. This is our rant section.
What else do?
Now we can do it for real. I probably get a call a day, maybe an email a day, saying I didn't get your download instructions for your software, Scott, or I didn't get your response to my email, and I could just have a macro, push a button, F10, that would say check your junk or your spam folder, and I guarantee you, within 5 minutes they respond back, oh yeah, there it was. Now I don't know about you, But I have my junk in my spam folder because I use Outlook right up there along with in and out. And I can see when there's stuff there. And I check it every day because stuff goes there. I am shocked at my rant that people never think. They just think guys like me or you ignore them, and we're not responding back to them. Yet there it is. And some of these emails are pissed off people. I sent you an email a week ago. I never heard back from you. Well, I sent you that email 5 minutes after you sent it to me, responding to it. Did you check your junk or your spam? Oh, there it is. Well, that's my rant. So keep your junk or your spam folder, whether you're on Gmail or whatever, up there where you can see it. Don't bury it. Have it where you can see what's in it. You can check it every now and then. You'll be surprised at what goes there. Other than the, hi, I'm Olga from Russia, which I've been getting a lot of lately. Anyway, I've got Olga going to my junk or my spam immediately. My other rant is, if you're in business and you're going to this always goes back to my separation business, obviously, but give better directions. I have a job last week. The guy sends me 2 files, and he says one of them is going to be the front chest. Well, I open them both up. They're both 20 inches big. Well, obviously bigger than a shirt, but one of them isn't obviously smaller. Usually when somebody sends you 2 files, they want one to be a front print, one to be a back print. Then one is probably 4 inches or so. One is probably 12 inches. This guy sent me 2 files. I got an email back. Which file is which? Oh, he emails back. It doesn't really matter. I got an email back. It'd be nice if you just told me which file is which, because they're not the same. They're similar graphics, but they're not identical. One has a phone number, one doesn't. I don't know which one you want. Please tell me. Oh, well, put the one with the phone number on the back. Okay, it's 20 inches though. How big do you want this file? 7 emails later. It just seems to me that if you're in business, you need to be more detail oriented and realize you need to give the information. My best accounts say, this is my job. It's going to be 4 inches for the front, 12 inches for the back. All I can print is 6 colors. All I can do is 1 flash, and I got to do a spot color here for the key logo. Good. I'm a happy guy. So I find myself frustrated that I have to do all these emails back and forth and kind of waste time and lose days sometimes waiting for their response on simple stuff. And so that's my rant, is give better information no matter what you're doing. I can't imagine a guy would call up like Broder Brothers and say, well, I need send me about 4 dozen, maybe 5 dozen small light blues, and maybe give me 3 or 4 dozen. Oh, we can't talk in dozens though. Reds. They wouldn't do that. So why do you send off graphic files to somebody and don't give the exact specs? Just my rant. You have a rant though along the same lines.
Well, no, not so much of a rant, but you've piqued my memory, and I think in the last month or so I've seen a checklist of art, and it might have come from George Killian from Chicago at Sharp Prints or something. So I will see what I can do to look that up. I'm a big believer in checklists. Mm-hmm. Anybody that's known me for the last 6 years has known that I make everybody that I meet try and read the book Checklist Manifesto by Atul Gawande, the famous surgeon. And that'll be a book at another time. But I will look, because I've seen just recently, and it's just in the back of my mind, a checklist for art. And everybody should just take that if you see that it's missing, it's so easy to check it off. What is a pain in the ass, especially for a guy like you that's not talking to people on the phone, is that it takes a tremendous amount of time to write. And they want you to stop what you're doing. Granted, we work at computers sometimes, but I rarely work at a computer. I'm working in a screen printing shop. I'm in the screen room. And so if there's of course, I'm not in sales when I'm working in the screen room. So it's just something to consider, a quick checklist, because once it goes through this, another person just said it. I'm just having this brainstorm. In one of the magazines I'm going to talk about just in a few minutes, I think it's Marshall Atkinson that says that you got to have the right information. I'll just save that for the book review.
All right. So we've been ranting the whole show anyway, but this is more. Hey, you think our book reviews are going to be like Oprah? They're going to go. It's on Richard's reading list.
Probably one of the biggest things that both Don Newman and David Landisman, men that I worked for, Richard, people don't read, and I don't understand that, because I'm reading all the time. I can't go to the bathroom without something to read. What am I going to? I can't spend the idea of spending 5 minutes, just alone with my own thoughts. Mm-hmm. I want to be reading something. So here's what came in the mail this week. I mentioned this magazine just a few moments ago. This is Stitches magazine. It comes out from the ASI group. And there are a couple of things here. Top shops, you were actually kind of surprised that there's actually screen printing shops here. But here's some news. They're reporting that American Apparel hires a new CEO, officially cutting ties with founder Dov Charney. Now, this is the most detailed thing that I've read. This isn't really news. I'm sure that anything that's in a paper magazine like this is probably 2 or 3 months old, but I haven't been following the American Apparel. But it just that was news to me, so I'm just mentioning it. It's in here as a confirmation. People that are interested in that and what's happening with Dove. But you said that the Wall Street Journal had some information about Dove just recently. I like that much better.
It was the last couple of days, and I was going to research it before we talked, but there was something about he's now talking to the employees privately, trying to get them all riled up and going on strike and blah blah blah. And so this saga is not over for sure, because he's not going to walk away from his many millions. Although what's funny, I read a story once that he took home records and did all kinds of work from home and kind of like a Howard Hughes kind of a thing. He was doing so much stuff, making decisions that underlings should be making, and making all decisions for a long time that were above him, or below him. I'm sorry, and just interesting character. And so we'll have to watch this story and report on it again. But I am surprised Stitches has that much on screen print. Stitches really is their embroidery. Wearables is really their screen print side. But you said it had the top shop. I didn't get that copy of the magazine yet.
Well, you don't get any magazines anymore, do you? You don't like that paper in your house?
No, I love the paper in my house. I'm trying to declutter, but yeah, I'm like you. I like to read a lot and have a physical something to read.
Well, like the olden days, this magazine comes in and everything on embroidery I tear out and I recycle. Sorry, but I don't care about embroidery. But these things about screen printing, now I've got the cover and these 3 articles. Now, there's an article about top shops. I don't know some of these people, but I've heard of Black Duck in Albuquerque. They've got a puff piece there, fashion piece, and say, oh, what a wonderful outfit you are. This second cover story article is about, it's called The Speedy Delivers, but it's about the St. Louis Print Company. I lived in St. Louis for 5 years, and gosh, I'd never heard of them, but maybe it's because I didn't, I lived there almost 20 years ago. But this is a nice profile about a screen printer who's grown up from when he was a young fellow, that he was screen printing and running shops at 19 and 20 years old. So I really like that kind of a bootstraps kind of an article. Then there's an embroidery article about a fine company. I'm sure that they're a fine company. There's an article about Cutter and Buck, who I used to buy a lot of their shirts for higher end work. But then we get back to advice from the top shop veterans. So I know a couple of these guys, or I've heard a couple of these guys. Howard Potter from A&P Master Images, Marshall Atkinson at Visual Impressions, who I used to live in Milwaukee and did business with Visual Impressions for years when I worked at Eder Manufacturing in the early 80s. Now it's run by Jay Berman, and Marshall Atkinson works for him. Carrie Heller at All USA Clothing, and a guy named Andy Schumann from Rockland Embroidery. So in here, I mentioned this earlier when we were ranting a bit, Marshall Atkinson says, what advice do you have for other decorators? They ask 4 basic questions. And Marshall says, make sure your work order has 100% of the information on it so your production crews can handle it easily. If anyone has to stop to ask a question, it isn't detailed enough or it's not filled out. So this is what Marshall is saying here in 2015. That means that people that are not doing that have certainly not read one of my columns or been to any of my seminars, because I've been pounding the full imprint instructions that the job should not even pass into the screen making department. It needs to be pushed back if it's missing critical information to get things done. And that's why people appear at your door. They're standing at your door. Rich, let me ask you this question. What does it say on the work order? Well, I need to know what mesh to put this on. What does it say on the imprint instructions? Now, if the person says there's nothing there, that's, of course, a jailable offense, and I might have to get out my scissors and stab someone. So,
yeah.
Now, more important is this little section here that I think is industry trends. They asked these 4 men, what industry trends are you seeing? Now, listen to this. more high-end apparel, more brand names, more synthetic fabrics, more recycled fibers, more sustainability programs. That's Marshall Atkinson there, definitely the leader of that, but less cotton.
Wow.
Now remember, I haven't printed since before 2000, so 15 years I've not been running a shop. I worked for Lawson, then Ulano, then I retired because of my stroke. But less cotton. This is why I read things all the time, and it's like all these microfibers, and I'm going, is this really a thing? Because cotton is what I always printed on because I specialized in the high-end halftone work.
I hadn't caught that. I think cotton prices are down, so who knows? But we know performance fabric is the hot flavor of the month, you know.
Well, there's more mileage in it for vendors because they get to make more money when they're supplying a more expensive thing. That's why we love to print on jackets, not caps.
Yeah, they found the little niche, the little extra charge for the baggage, I think.
So Wednesday, after we recorded the last show, I got the wearables that you talked about, your fabulous article in it. And as I'm looking for your article, I run into two other things that you seem to have just forgotten about. You only seem to mention your article, Scott. But there's a very interesting article about shop shakeup and shop layout. Now, it's not really design, but it talks about a designer working on a shop change up, and I think that's important stuff. There's articles about sublimation, but Thomas Trimmingham has an article. Oh, no, I'm ahead of myself. That's in the wrong magazine. Sorry, I'll get to Thomas in just a moment. Just before your article is The Formula for Badass Foil, written by Rick Roth and Tom Davenport. And I love foil. I used to teach that in the classes I used to do with people from Union Inc. when I would do travel stuff. But yes, your article, Stop Ruining Great Artwork, the problem that we'll have for the rest of our lives. And of course, this week, the New Impressions magazine showed up. Nice girl on the cover. And there's where Thomas Trimmingham is. Thomas Trimmingham. Next to you, Scott, my favorite art. I gotta get this line. My favorite art writer about art.
He's good. I like Tom.
He's very good. I've talked to him on the phone only a couple of times. Mostly it was when I was working with him at Ulano. I didn't work with him. He'd call for advice, and I was, I know who you are. So I really trust everything that he says, and I love his articles, especially the ones in Screen Printing Magazine. Not that this is bad. But he's got ladies' decoration things. Very nice article. He covers heat transfers, rhinestones, a lot of other decoration techniques that I'm not that interested in. But now we come to the most important thing that everybody should read. I'm saying required reading. It's an article by Mark Coudray, the most expensive sale you'll ever make. Now, there's a lot of charts and graphs. It's very detailed. Mark has done a lot of research these days in customer loss. He has a very sad story in his life, and where his son got a terminal cancer, and it really did some devastating damage to his business. Here's a man who really knows what he's talking about when it talks about losing customers, what it costs to get new customers. It's a serious topic because it really has to do with cash flow, and cash is how our business actually runs. We must have replenished customers. One of the things he points out is that so many of your customers, are they only a one-time customer? But he really talks about the expense of having to maintain a customer base and getting new customers. Required reading, Impressions Magazine.
It's a good article. Actually, I read that because I get impressions digitally. Well, you know, you ever watch Shark Tank? You know, the TV show Shark Tank? Well, one of the questions they always ask these new entrepreneurs is, what does it cost to acquire a customer? Do you guys know? And half the time, these new entrepreneurs have no idea. Other times, they have the number right there, but it's a big deal that people don't think about. So, yeah, I did read Mark's article, and it's a good little article. And Mark's really, you're right, Mark has been, like many of us, been up and down, in and out, and made it, lost it. And so Mark is a good guy, and he writes great about that kind of stuff. Okay, that's our show for the week. Hope you enjoyed it. Next week, we're going to be talking to you from where?
I'll be at home, but I'll be reporting directly from the Atlantic City ISS show.
Looking forward to it. Bye-bye.